So, you know that one of the things we noticed that structurally you were a little uncertain. So we've been looking at the introduction structure, main body paragraph structure, and today we're going to look at the conclusion structure. I'd like to remind you that these are suggestions only. You absolutely don't have to use them if something else comes to you that is logically serving your purposes better in an exam situation. But I think it's good to have one under your belt. There is nothing scientific or like you won't get failed if you don't do this. That's not the case. What did I warn you about conclusions? What can happen during the conclusion? What do you think?
Bringing in new information.
Yeah, if you're bringing in lots of new information, it really becomes a new body paragraph. But actually what I was referring to there was you can lose your marks. I see so many essays that end with things like, the author has used visual conventions to position the reader to have feelings about the text, such as racism is bad. If you've written a beautiful, eloquent piece of work, you don't want something so ordinary and bland at the bottom. In fact, you want to really show that you've engaged with it and you understand why you've been given it. Of course, you're still in an exam situation in most cases, or you're writing under time conditions. So you really can't be sitting there umming and ahhing about it being perfect, which is why follow this structure. Until you get really used to it, until you know what you're doing, follow this structure. First of all, make sure you've answered the question. Make sure you've answered it. If the question is a how question, how have you been positioned, you've already established the construction aspects. What you might be looking at there is what perspective is being endorsed, what idea is being naturalised, what idea is being challenged, what was meant to be revealed by your investigation of the construction. There's always a question within a question. There's the how, looking at the construction, but what was it they were asking you? If you're looking at something's being constructed to privilege something or marginalise something, what ideology or context is being looked at there? One sentence if you can. But luckily you do get a little bit more time. Engage with that idea a little bit more. Is it relevant to now? Is it meant to comment on now? Is it concerning for now? Think about engaging with the question, showing that engaging with the ideas of the question. You only have about 3 to 4 sentences, so remember to lead out. You might want an inspirational quote, not from the text itself, then it looks like you're analysing. Maybe from a song, from a book, from the writer. Maybe some kind of call to action. There's nothing that says you can't do that. If it's one of those where something has been revealed about that there's marginalisation in a society, perhaps a call to action might be important. Or perhaps something reflective, maybe something that we as a society need to consider moving forward. These sorts of things show that you actually understand the deeper ideas that are being examined, the societal aspects, the context, the conflicts that are being discussed. You know, and it's the consequence of your analysis, and it means you won't repeat yourself. So, going with the example that we used for our main body paragraph, where I looked at Smasher and I looked at Blackwood and I looked at Thornhill, and I was saying that she had basically failed in her attempt to rewrite the frontier narrative form into something a little bit less racist. I would be saying that. I would be saying that, you know, she has, that ultimately Grenville has failed in her attempt to separate herself from her own white privilege, to separate the genre from the white perspective. I'd engage with the idea a little bit more, and I'd be talking about the fact that simply omitting Aboriginal voices from a text isn't the same as representing them. Like, their gap isn't filled by anything. I might lead out perhaps with a quote, which I'm going to really wreck, saying something along the lines of Jack Davis, as Jack Davis says, healing can only come from us listening to each other and learning, and we can't unless we hear those voices. quite different than saying the text uses narrative conventions to position us to understand that this is a frontier narrative, which means it looks at Australia's history. Quite different. Well, a lot more marks in it. Hands up if you can see the marks.